All right. We're
All
recording,
right.
Jimmy. How are you doing?
Good. I am seeing if I can get like a Bitcoin background, but
Yeah,
yeah, the
that looks good enough.
the Zoom AI thing is interesting. It just sort of makes stuff up. So yeah. Anyway, am I blue or am I sharp?
Are you good?
Okay. All right. Great.
Well, good to see you.
Yeah. Good to see you too.
And I think, Jimmy, I owe you an apology because we've done over 500 episodes, and this is the first time that you've been on the show. And I don't know why or how that's happened, how this hasn't happened before.
Really? I've talked to you on Zoom or something like that before. Maybe it was on another show,
I
but
remember
yeah,
that
it's the
conversation.
first time for everything, I guess.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
we did. I know exactly what you're referencing because I was thinking, no, I'm sure we did a podcast, but it wasn't. It was you and I connected because you were about to go traveling with your family, and you'd read the
Oh,
book
that's
Choose
right.
Life.
That's right.
And
Hmm.
of course, we sat down to have a chat and fire a few questions at me. And before you knew it, we were talking about Bitcoin, and an hour and a half went by. We should have probably just pressed record, but we didn't.
Fair enough.
And that's when we started bumping into you and your family at all the conferences around Europe because
Hmm.
you pulled the plug, you took your family with you, and you started traveling and living that nomad lifestyle. And I think you did that. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think for about a year.
Yeah, yeah. 277 days, 34 countries. It was a lot of fun.
Wow, that's a lot of countries too, man.
You did that all in a year. We did like 40 something countries in two.
Yeah, that's that's
Yeah.
wild.
And
There's a lot.
we did every continent except Antarctica, and we came pretty close. We went to Ushuaia, which is about the closest you can get without actually going. Yeah.
That's crazy. And I thought I did this, you know, the hard way with four kids, but Jimmy, you did it with
6.
what were their ages?
When we started, it was 5 to 15. When we finished, it was 6 to 16.
Man, that's a lot. That is a lot. And I can hear people recoiling at their as we shoot down their own excuses as to, oh no, I could never do that. I couldn't take my kids out of school and start traveling. Like, who would ever do that? There's no way. It's impossible. But all you got to do is put your mind to it and one step in front of the other.
Well, I mean, and savings helps a lot, right? And that's what Bitcoin is for. If you have savings and it's okay, well, we could go choose to do this if we want to. It's an option. And I think after COVID, especially, it was very attractive because we had been like confined and so on. So, it's like when, it's possible the world changes and you don't get to visit certain countries. And we didn't get to visit Russia. We didn't get to visit China. We didn't even visit Australia for various reasons related to COVID and, obviously the war. I'm glad that we got to because there are places that we visited that you can't go to anymore, like Palestine, and Lebanon. So, you got to do it while you can. You're not getting any younger, and situations may change.
Absolutely. Okay, Lauren, you've got to fire the first question at Jimmy.
Why does Fiat ruin everything?
Well, I have a long answer, and yeah, there you go. And I have a short answer. The short answer is that fiat ruins everything because it changes incentives that in a way that decivilizes everything, whereas sound money does the opposite. But if you want the details, it's all in the book.
Yes, it is. And a great book it is as well. And do you know, take a guess, how many books do you think Jimmy Song has been part of writing? He wrote this whole one himself.
Didn't you say like 50? 15 or
No,
something I
no, it's
wrote.
not that many.
Not that many?
Not
Okay.
not quite. I aspire to do that, but not quite there yet.
Oh,
Do you have the answer, Jimmy?
Yeah, I do. Five.
oh,
And
nice.
so there's one other you wrote completely by yourself, and the others are joint, or what's
Yeah,
the?
yeah. I wrote programming Bitcoin that I wrote by myself, and then the other three are collaborations with various people. So yeah,
And that
little
is the
Bitcoin
Little
book. Thank
Bitcoin
God for
book.
Bitcoin.
I'm going to show them
Yeah,
all. The Little Bitcoin book.
uh,
Thank God for Bitcoin and Bitcoin and the American Dream.
yeah, that's
And I've read
correct.
them all. And thank you to Jimmy for. I know it's hard to get everybody together and do those book sprints that you do, but
Mhm.
it's a brilliant project. I think it's what, in fact, what, for those that are listening that don't know the how you set these things up. What's the premise of a book sprint?
Well, the premise is very similar to a coding sprint or a design sprint or something like that. It's this idea that you get the right people in the room and create something relatively quickly. So, if you've been part of a startup, this is a very common thing where you try to make a product really, really fast because you're going to run out of money very quickly. So, um, if you do the same thing with books, it turns out actually you can write a book in a relatively short amount of time. The first time we did that was with the Little Bitcoin book. We got 8 people together, really nice mansion that we rented, and the 8 of us wrote for 4 days, 5 days, and had something that we were proud of by the end. And it required a little bit of editing afterwards, and getting certain things related to it done. But we had something very workable very quickly, and it's a process. And the key is getting everybody in the room together and using all of their brain power for brainstorming, motivating each other, and doing a lot of editing, a lot of writing, and doing that all at the same time. That seems to work pretty well. I've done it 3 times now, and I've enjoyed every single one of them. And I feel pretty close to my co-authors. I think we'll always have that bond because we did this hard thing together. And I'm sure if you've ever been part of a team like that and accomplishing something that you didn't think was possible, you have good memories of it, and I certainly do.
Sounds like fun. Sounds like you all split up, go into your bedrooms, just write, come down, brainstorm, share a meal, share some ideas, wake up, share a few beers, maybe whoever's there, go to sleep, wake up the next morning, read what you wrote the night before, and think, what a load of crap! What, oh my God, what was I thinking? And it all starts again.
Well, yeah, it's exhausting, honestly. Like, you usually stay up 2, 3 a.m. and you're all working, and a lot of editing, a lot of conflict, honestly, like about like, okay, do we keep this or do we change this, and what do we want to do with it, um, and yeah, it's you have to handle all that, and at the end, you have something that everyone is proud of. That's the key, and I enjoy the process and hope to do more of it. But like you were hinting at, the hardest part is getting the people in the same room and booking off a week to go do it.
Mm.
And that tends to be fairly difficult.
Especially with a large family, man. You've got a lot of you're putting everything on your wife at that point, and there's a lot
Uh,
of moving parts.
Yeah, there definitely are. I mean, I do travel on a regular basis, so she's kind of used to it. And kids are a little older now, so they can drive. At least one of them can drive, so yeah, it
Oh, that
helps.
that must help.
That's yeah. I don't know.
Like,
That just gave me like a jump. I forget like how young people can drive in America sometimes.
mm, yeah, you got to wait till
Hmm
17 here minimum before you can even
Well,
start.
16 here, and you get a permit at 15, so
Yeah,
it's very nice. Once they start driving themselves to school, it's like, okay, bye, and then they come back home. It's like, oh, hi, there you are.
yeah. I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to that. Right, 1 second, Lauren, because I want to show Jimmy a book that I used the other day.
Okay.
Uh, you're going to like this story. You might have seen my tweet. The book is, for those that are listening, the book is Thank God for Bitcoin, The Creation, Corruption, and Redemption of Money.
Oh my gosh, is that what you said to those people that turned up at our doors?
Don't ruin the story. Spoiler alert. So,
you stole his thunder a little bit, man.
Right. We're going to have to. We're going to have a chat afterwards about your involvement in the podcast. Really. So your co-authors for this one were Robert Breedlove, J. M. Bush, Gabe Higgins, George McHale, Lyle Pratt, Julia Turiansky, and Derek Walchak. And I loved the book. I really enjoyed it. I read it a long time ago when it first came out. And what Lauren is referencing, yes, about a week and a half ago, we have a knock at the door. It's during the day. Everybody's at home. And I'm the first to the door to answer it. And it's an older lady and a young man, maybe in his mid-20s. And they're just straight in there. It's like, good afternoon, sir. Do you believe in God? And do you think we'll ever have peace? Okay, well, we're going straight in. So they're known as Jehovah's Witnesses. That's what they do. They go around and make house calls and try and preach the Bible and bring people into their thinking around Christianity. And Jimmy knows way more about all of this than I could ever pretend to. So I started the conversation with them. And after about 10 minutes and them reading me some Psalms, I asked them if they'd ever heard of Bitcoin. And I was wearing a Bitcoin racing hoodie. I just pointed to the Bitcoin sign. And the older lady said that she had heard of it, but she didn't understand it. So I looked at the younger guy and I'm like, and yourself? And he said, yeah, I've heard of it. Of course I've heard of it. But didn't it crash? Isn't it done? Didn't it go down to like 20,000 pounds? Like nobody talks about it anymore. So the two most classic responses when you first encounter people and ask them about their Bitcoin knowledge. So I said, do you mind if I just go and grab a book? I'll be back in like 5 seconds. So I return to the top step of our house, armed with Thank God for Bitcoin, explained to them the premise of the book and why and how each author had taken a chapter each and how they explore Psalms and quotations throughout the Bible and link it to Bitcoin and to money. Mate, I spent the next 15 minutes reading from this book, from Psalms, tying it all back to Bitcoin, tying it all back to sound money, tying it all back to her first question, do you believe we'll ever have peace? And how Bitcoin can be, a harbinger of peace if we can all get everybody in lockstep using sound money that can't be corrupted and printed away from us and used as a weapon of war. And they left thanking me for a truly intriguing conversation and promising me that they were going to go and pick up a book, Thank God for Bitcoin themselves. So I don't know if they'll ever come back.
Yeah, I think it's a very slight chance of that happening.
But I went back into the kitchen and my wife said, where have you been? The door went ages ago. Who was it? Was it the neighbors? I'm like, no, I've just been orange pilling some Jehovah's Witnesses.
So they came to proselytize you and you proselytized them instead.
Absolutely. And you had a very strong hand in that. I felt as though I had you stood next to me at the door when I was delivering these sermons. Another thank you for your work.
Well, nicely done. And that's all you. And if they do end up getting orange pilled and save themselves from fiat destruction, then all the more power to them, I guess.
Absolutely. Right. So, Lauren, did you have any more questions for Jimmy before you run off?
I just want to say one more thing about like when you're writing a book. It's you get all the great ideas just when you're about to fall into a deep sleep and you're like, oh, I'll write it tomorrow. And you wake up and you're like, what was it
again? I've had many of those moments about a lot of writing that I've done. But for specifically the book writing process, I make sure to get them out early. And the way you do that, and I have this very specific article, How to Write a Book in 4 Days, that I published after doing the Little Bitcoin book that you can go read. But basically, it's like this. You you want to start with the end in mind. And this is useful not just in writing books, but for almost anything that you want to do, right? If you have a goal, you want to sort of see, look, and feel what it's going to be like. And once you have a better idea of what that target looks like, then you can approach it a lot easier. So what I make everybody do when we're writing a book together is I say, okay, pretend that we're done with the book and we've give yourself the benefit of the doubt. It has everything that you want in there. Now imagine that you're reading an Amazon review that somebody wrote. What does it say, right? So if you have that as your target, right? Like and describe this person, right? Who wrote the review? Why did they pick up the book? What did they think of the book? What did they learn from the book? Just write it all out. And that helps you sort of like center or give you sort of like a North Star for where you're going. And once you have that, once you know where you're going, then you get out all the ideas. Stuff like, okay, they're currently here and you want them to go here. What do they need to know to, get their mind from here to here, right? Like here's the review I want them to leave. Here's where they are now. How do I get them there? And you jot down every idea that they about what they need to know, and it's ultimately serving your audience. And I make everybody like write it down on like one idea per post-it note, and it's usually each person usually has like 50 to 100 post-it notes of ideas, and we stick them all on a wall. Like just every idea that everyone has, we stick them all on a wall, and then we spend like 2 or 3 hours organizing them, saying, okay, this belongs with this belongs with this, and then we group them, and then we label them. Say, okay, you know what? This whole area is all about inflation. This whole area is all about Bitcoin, or why Bitcoin is important, or and this whole area is about the current monetary system and its history. And then we label them and say, okay, well, we got our chapter titles. We now know what we need to write about. And then we go, okay, like what's a good ordering so that you go from point A to point B. And then now you're writing with a bunch of ideas. You're not starting with a blank page. You have all these ideas that everybody contributed to, that you can go, okay, well, how do I communicate this? And you can do this again at the chapter level. Okay, where do I want them to be at the beginning? Where do I want them to be at the end? But the idea is you want to do the idea generation all at once when you're in that mode of brainstorming, and not sort of like just, okay, like I'm about to go to sleep and my brain's telling me I need to write about this, this, and this.
Okay, so go write a book, Lauren. Jimmy's
I,
just giving you the whole magic sauce.
Yeah.
Now
you
know
could
how the
you don't have to write a book, but you could certainly write an article pretty easily now, like something
Yeah.
that you know about. It's a good way to sort of get started, and you write enough of those, and you can put them together like a book, like I did with Fiat Ruins Everything.
Okay.
Do you have any further questions?
I do. I don't.
What about that question?
Oh. Okay. Um, why are you wearing a hat?
Um, this is an excellent question, and I have a rather long answer. So I hope you're comfortable, or Daniel, I hope your leg's not too tired. Um, But I wear the hat for three different reasons. First one is pretty normal. I'm from Texas. I'm from Texas. And if you know anyone from Texas, they want you to know that they're from Texas, right? And this is one of the things that makes a Texan, is they're very proud to be Texan and they want to show off their Texanness. And the hat is a great way for me to show off that I am from Texas. So you meet me, it's like, okay, where are you from? And I say Texas. Oh, that makes sense. You have a hat, right? Like I should have known, right? I wear my boots and cowboy belt for the same reason. But that's reason number one at a very superficial level. It's because I'm proud of being Texan. Reason number two, I also work in Bitcoin, and I am known as sort of like the Asian cowboy in the Bitcoin space. And the reason why I wear the hat there is because um, it is a place of great danger and opportunity, right? Danger and opportunity. And it's a reminder that there is like a lot that you can do and a lot that you can gain and a lot of places where you can be successful, but there's also a lot of danger, a lot of pitfalls, a lot of places where you'll get trapped and robbers and of it's basically like the Wild West, right? And that's what the hat is a reminder of. And finally, the third reason is because I love that 19th century era, and this is more for me as an American. Uh, you know, America from 1800 to 1900, if you think about it, went from a former backwater British colony to a world superpower in about 100 years. And so what happened during those 100 years? Well, we conquered the rest, right? And that's the spirit of this cowboy hat is that journey west. And if you there's an expression that's very American. It was "Go west, young man. Go west, young man." And that expression was started around 1800, and the idea was if you grew up on the East Coast, where that was where most of the population was, you would maybe apprentice with a baker or a cobbler or something like that, and then you'd have the skill, but you'd be competing in your own town against bakers and cobblers that have been doing it for 30, 40 years. So what they would tell the young men would be, go west, young man. Like, why are you staying here? It's going to be very hard competing against all of these people. Go out west where there's a lot of opportunity because they don't have cobblers, they don't have bakers, and you go to a frontier town, you'll be the only one. You'll have plenty of customers, and it'll be growing. And that's ultimately how the U.S. went from sea to shining sea. 1800, it was mostly colonies on the East Coast. And then, it spread west, Ohio, Michigan, past that to the Mountain West, and then all the way out to the West Coast. And it happened during that 100-year era. And it's that spirit of adventure, of going out and conquering, that I wanted to capture back because we don't really have that many frontiers anymore. I guess other than space, but that's extremely difficult. But what we do have is a different kind of frontier in Bitcoin, and that's where you can go out and do something new, right? Like if you're a CPA, for example, you can go work for a Big Four accounting firm, or you can go out west. In this case, that would be doing something within Bitcoin. If you're a CPA that specializes in Bitcoin, you're going to get some clients because there aren't that many that understand it. If you're an artist that's doing Bitcoin art, you can actually do something instead of getting lost in the shuffle of modern art world, where you're not going to have that much opportunity. You just need to find sort of like your niche, right? And it doesn't have to be technical or protocol development or wallet development. This industry needs a lot of people for a lot of different things. And the message there is find your place, right? Go west, young man. Go find it. So that's why I
not expecting you were like, oh yeah, because I like the hat.
Yeah.
That's what you were expecting.
Yeah.
Not a history lesson.
Yeah, it's cool,
And by the way, Jimmy, it does look cool.
Yeah. I tell people everyone looks at least 20% better. It doesn't matter if you're a man, woman, old or young. Everyone looks 20% better in a cowboy hat.
I need
guaranteed.
a cowboy hat.
Yeah.
You got your cowboy.
You should try it.
Show Jimmy. Texas Slim, modern T-Man on Twitter, Texas Slim, that's doing the beef initiative. He
Hmm.
came on the show, when he first started that, and met Lauren a bunch of times because we'd go through his articles. And he was
Hmm.
kind enough to send her a pair of. He's Texan, obviously.
Wow, those are those Tacovas?
I
These
don't know
are.
what they are.
Well, let me see. Let me see. Let me read the box.
Lucchese's? What are they?
Okay, it begins with a C.
Huh.
Can't read it. Yeah, it would have been written on the on the sole, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe it's written inside too. Let's
Put
see.
newspaper in it.
Cavenders. Cavenders.
Cavenders, yeah. Yeah, that's a popular one. Yeah.
Cavenders
Yeah,
cowboy boots.
yeah. I mean they don't look worn. How come you're not wearing them?
Well, if I'm honest, I was like, I lived in rural France. I was also kind of like,
She doesn't want to ruin them.
I don't know. See,
She's not worn them riding, and
Uh-huh.
no, well, that's what they're built for. It's exactly their use.
Yeah, and the thing is, you can get them cleaned and stuff. You just
Yeah.
like
they were
and
so.
it all also looks a little better after they've been worn a little bit. Like you've broken them in.
Yeah. I might have to
Just
chop off a couple toes to put them back on, but it's fine.
Yeah.
Worth it.
her her
well,
sis her sister
you're a
and her mother
woman,
want
so
to
you
wear
could
them.
you could wear it on the outside of your pants, right? Like for a man, you got to tuck it under your jeans, but for women, they can tuck it on the outside, and it's still kind of fashionable. Um, and you can also wear it with shorts or skirt, which men can't do. You just look crazy if you're wearing
Yeah,
shorts and cowboy boots
Me
as a
and Jimmy
guy.
don't go
So.
that way.
Yeah, but I went to Italy and I brought my cowboy boots on purpose, and everyone was wearing them. I'm like, oh, I should wear them. And then I did, but my dad parked the farthest away from a cafe, and my toes were like dying by the time I got
Yeah,
back.
this is
Like,
this is why you got to break them in when
yeah,
when you're at home.
Wear them
yeah,
around the house.
yeah.
They
Yeah.
become really comfortable, I promise. Like cowboy boots are actually quite nice. And for women, you get the extra height with the little heel and everything. So it's all around good thing.
All right. So you got the boots. I'll get the hat, and we'll look cool at all the Bitcoin conferences.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's see a couple toes first.
All right. Well, thanks for your questions.
Thank you. Oh no, I don't know. Howdy.
Now you've asked all the fun questions. I got nothing left. Well, for those actually, Jimmy, that are new to Bitcoin and are finding the show and might not know who Jimmy Song is and how long you've been in the space and how you started off,
Hmm.
I think it's probably we should do that first and get that out of the way and make sure people understand how long you've been around. So when, how, and why did Bitcoin come and present itself to you? What was going on at that stage in your life?
Yeah, I'm a programmer. I've been one since I was like 9 years old, and I think right out of college I worked as a programmer for 12 different startups over like a period of 10 years or something like that. Um, and it was 2011 when I first encountered Bitcoin. And being sort of the nerdy programmer that I am, the place where I got my news at the time was called Slashdot. And if you're not familiar with that website, it's a tech geek website. Their tagline, I think, is news for nerds, important stuff, right? So you get, and it's also kind of a little bit of a joke because way back when you used to say websites with http colon slash slash www.amazon.com, something like that. So the website was called Slashdot, so it would be http colon slash 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 dot org, right? Like so it's kind of a funny kind of way of saying it. Anyway, it was where I was going for news, and it was, I believe, February of 2011 when I saw a story where I didn't know anything, and this is fairly unusual. When you're reading tech news, you at least have an inkling about everything that you're reading, right? So hey, here's a new Linux distro, here's the new iPhone, here's a new kind of CMOS sensor, and here's like the new 12 nanometer process for chip development. It's you had, I don't know the details, but I at least know something because I've read stories on them before and so on. But this one was new, and it said internet only currency Bitcoin reaches dollar parity. That was the headline. And this is how old it was. The word Bitcoin was spelled with a capital B and a capital C, like camel cased one word. And I was like, what is this? So I started reading that story and then started doing some research. And almost immediately I found out that there was a 21 million limit. And I think a lot of people have this reaction when they find that out, which is, oh, I want some, right? And my immediate thought, like as soon as I heard that, was I want some, and man, if this thing catches on, I better be one of the few, first people to get it, and not one of the last, because if it works, I have no idea if it does at this point. I haven't examined any of the code. I just know a few of the properties. It was immediately I should probably get some. So that whole day I spent looking, well, not just reading about Bitcoin, but looking for ways to go buy it. And it turned out to be very difficult. At the time, the only articles I can find or sort of ways to buy it were like kind of old at that time. So I found an article, I found this website where this guy was selling Bitcoin for PayPal, right? Like just trading it. But PayPal had shut it down by October of 2010, and he could no longer do it. Um, and then I found out about mining, and there was a guy saying, I'm going to pay off this GPU that I bought with funds from Bitcoin mining. And I guess he managed to do it, but I was like, okay, I don't know how to do any of that, but I have this Amazon web server instance. Maybe I'll try to do that. Um, tax that server for a couple of days and slow down some of the stuff that I was working on. But didn't mind anything because I was, I didn't know it at the time, but I was solo mining, and there's only a very slight chance that you find a block if you're solo mining, even back then. Um, so I ended up, finding out about Mount Gox, and it's like, oh, it's an exchange in Japan, and then the only way you could get money to it was through a money transmission service called Dwala, and you had to open an account at Dwala, and at least back then, what you had to do was, link your bank account, and then they'll do two deposits to your bank account, and then you have to put in the numbers of the two deposits, and then you'd be able to deposit to your Dwala account, and then you'd have to link your Dwala account to your Mt. Gox account, and then once that link was established, like a week later, then you can transfer money. Yeah, so it was like a 2 3 week process. I was like, forget it. I don't want to do this. Obviously, one of the biggest regrets of my life, because it was reaching dollar parity, meaning it was just at $1, and yeah, so one of the biggest regrets of my life. Later that summer, June of 2011, it popped up on my radar again because Wired had written. Um, well, I noticed a few of the blogs were trying to get Bitcoin donations for their work and things like that. But that summer it went from $1 to 30 in a matter of a few weeks, and that's like considered the first real Bitcoin bull market. It crashed right after, and there was a lot of consternation and all that. But that was when I was like, okay, I better like set. I had started on setting some of that up, the Dwala and Mount Gox thing. So I finished setting it up, and that's when I got in. Coding wise, I got in to doing that in 2013 during the bull markets. Bull markets are great for this sort of thing. Um, and yeah, that's then I started contributing to open source projects that were Bitcoin related, and the rest is history, I guess.
Oh man, and your YouTube channel, you should shield
Hmm.
that because when did you start that?
Well, that was like 2017, and the thing is, like, I was doing open source projects in 2013, and I think I did like 2 podcasts in 2014. And if you like search YouTube, there's like a talk that I gave in 2014 or something like that when I was working at another company, but nobody knew who I was up until 2017. And that in itself is a different story because I was working for Paxos, which I think previously to that it was called ItBit, and it was an exchange in New York. And I was working for them, and there was a social media guy that wanted some articles written so they could get more followers on and get people on their email list and so on. So I was like, okay, and asked me to write something. So I wrote an article, and it was about the sort of like scaling controversy that was happening at the time. And he came back and said it's too Bitcoin focused. We don't want to put it on. I'm like, we're a Bitcoin company. Why? He's like, well, no. Our VCs are like really into blockchain right now, and they don't want the word Bitcoin out there. I was like, all right, then I guess I wrote this like long article. So I offered it around to every publication I knew. Nobody would touch it. So I was like, all right, screw that. I'm going to go publish on my own on Medium. I did, and I posted it on my Twitter and like various email lists that I was on. And it got picked up by Jameson Lopp and some other people, and they were like, you should read this article because he's making the article's title was why Bitcoin will be fine even if we don't get SegWit or 2 MB blocks. And that was the main idea of the article. And people responded positively. So I wrote another article the next week, and another article the week after, and another article the week after, and soon people were kind of following me because I was explaining sort of like the technical aspect. Um, and I didn't realize at the time, but there really weren't that many people that were explaining things from a technical perspective, and they were all just sort of confused about like the block size war and so on. So as a result of that, I started getting invited on some YouTube shows, just as sort of like the commentator. And I guess they liked me, so they kept inviting me back. And at a certain point, they were like, you should start your own channel, and I think people would tune in and so on. And this was 2017. We were kind of running into a bull market, and I think the sort of like big turning point for me in terms of like going from sort of anonymous Twitter guy to somebody that like you know started getting recognized in like Bitcoin circles was August 1st, 2017, and that was when you had BIP 91 activation and all there was a lot of drama around that. So the night before, I think I had done a show with Tone and Thomas and some other people, and Tone was like, "Hey, we should do a stream tomorrow to talk, see what happens." I was like, "All right, let's," and I calculated. I was like, "Okay, well, I think it'll happen around 10 o'clock, so we should probably get on like an hour and a half before and just talk about it and see what happens." So we started the stream at like 8 a.m. and I think we went I had calculated it wrong. It ended up being like more like at noon, and but it became like enormously popular. Like just we had more viewers on that one stream than we ever had before. Like we had like thousands of live viewers and stuff. We were trending on YouTube and stuff, and like people were like texting Tone saying, like we usually have our trading desk open to CNBC on the television screen. We have your stream up right now. We're like, what the heck is going on? So and we had like all kinds of guests come through and stuff, and it became a thing, right? Because after that, any big event now there's like a 12-hour live stream of somebody doing something, and that was sort of like the beginning. But But that's when things just sort of like flipped. I went from, maybe 200 followers at the beginning of 2017. By April, I had like maybe 1,000. Uh, by by that time, I had maybe like 7,000, and then like by the end of the year, I had almost 100,000. It was just sort of like really crazy growth in a bull market. So yeah, my a friend of mine like likes to joke, you got famous because you started writing a blog. And I was like, "Yep, that's exactly what happened." And it turned out that there was room in the market for somebody that could explain some of the technical stuff, and that's what I became.
And that's exactly what you were saying at the beginning, right? Go west, young man.
Yeah.
Your
Yeah.
your explanation to Lauren, and this is what I really preach this to all the plebs. And we have this saying in Bitcoin, build on Bitcoin. And
Hmm.
most people just default think to, oh, but I can't code.
Mm.
I can't build on Bitcoin because they see it as a tech
Hmm.
space, and that's that. Whereas you and I both know, write a freaking article, draw
Hmm.
a or paint something, make a
Hmm.
song, write a
Hmm.
poem, make a
Hmm.
video, start a podcast, make some
Hmm.
clothing, make some key rings, like the stuff that we have seen now at all of these conferences around the world that we've been lucky enough to get to. Start a sports team, not to Bitcoin racing, and or buy a football team if you're Peter
Uh-huh.
McCormack. That
Uh-huh.
all of that stuff is building on Bitcoin. And if you've got something in you that you are ready to put forward to this community, it will get picked up. It might
Hmm.
not go crazy, but it will get
Hmm.
picked up by a handful of people. And before you know it, you've got 3 or 4 people around you that think the same as you, see the same as you, want to help you, want to lean into that with you, and off you go. And it's going to change your life in immeasurable ways.
Mm. Yeah, and I want to point out that everyone has different talents, right? Like I happen to be pretty good at explaining technical things, and I never really got paid for that when I was actually a coder, but it's something that fits my personality. I'm kind of an outgoing guy. I like talking a lot anyway, and that's not something that I got to do before. So if you see sort of like a niche, and it doesn't have to be anything technical. I think people have this preconception that you need to be actually building some Lightning app or something like that. No, you don't have to do that at all. Actually, there's plenty of things. I remember talking to Natalie Brunell when she was sort of like coming into the space. And she was like, "Yeah, I finally like quit my broadcast journalism, thing." She was like a news reporter in LA. I'm like, "Yeah, but I don't know if I can afford like going to this conference, like $1,000 and travel." I'm like, what are you talking about? You have all these skills. You should leverage them and get somebody else to pay for it, right? I was like, and she's like, you're right. I was like, go make a video, go interview people. Like they'll eat it all up, and you know how to do this. You have a particular skill set. Just go interview people, and you'll do fine. And people will gladly pay you money to do it. And she was like, obviously her career's taken off doing that. She's like interviewing Robert F. Kennedy and, like various administration people. And, she's on TV all the time because this is what she did, right? But she went from local reporter to basically sort of national, like Bitcoin expert, go-to person. Um, in part because she knows how to make videos, she knows how to do interviews, she knows how to be a good reporter, and this is a skill set that she brought to Bitcoin, as part of what she did. And that's the thing. If you're good at something, you can find an intersection between that and Bitcoin. Now the key is you have to be good at it, right? Like you can't just be like, you know what, I've never painted before, but I'm gonna make a Bitcoin painting and go sell it. That's not how it works. You have to be good at whatever it is. But everyone has unique skills and abilities. Go leverage that and figure out an intersection with Bitcoin, and I'm sure you're going to do well with it. And it's a matter of excellence, and seeing looking for opportunities and so on.
So back to 2017, where you were
Mm.
just getting, all of this
Mhm.
going and finding your stride. Did you ever fall for the siren song of any of the ICOs and the altcoins or shitcoins at that time? Do you have the list of shame that I have?
I do. Well, so the first altcoin I think for me was Litecoin and Namecoin, and they're very early. In fact, those two are two of the first altcoins ever, and they came out, I think, August or September of 2011. Now, I didn't know about them when they first came out, but I didn't know about them by 2013, and stupidly, I did buy some of those, largely on the rumor that Mt. Gox would be listing Litecoin, which they never did, by the way. But that was sort of like the rumor. It's like, oh, they list Litecoin, it's going to go to the moon or whatever. Um, and then the third one was Decred, and that was because I knew the developers. A few of them were in Austin, and they're very good developers, right? Like just like top notch, like free BSD contributors and stuff like that. Like just really smart guys. And I even work with them on BTCD. That's the Golang implementation of the Bitcoin software, and it's the basis for uh, Lightning Labs, their implementation of Lightning is based on BTCD. So I think Lalu actually is owner of BTCD on GitHub now. But I knew those guys, and I saw the code and I was like, wow, this is really cool. And I like this is my sort of like shame, is that they offered me some money to like promote it, and I took it. I regret doing it, but I think it was about a year of sort of like going to their events and things like that. But yeah. I mean, and I did it because I thought they were really smart guys, and they are, no doubt about that. As far as like code goes, and the cleanliness of it, and the robustness of it, and so on. I mean, they're right up there with against any altcoin, honestly. But the fact of the matter was that they're still centralized, and they and ultimately it wasn't it's still an altcoin, and yeah, that so I had to get away from that, but
I
that
don't
those are
even know if
my
they're still
stories.
around.
Decred is still around. They're
Really?
definitely around. Yeah,
Okay.
I think I mean there were a top, what I've noticed with these is that um like there are several projects where I'm like, okay, they have good developers. But the market doesn't respect good development, right? Like so, you know, Grin, Monero, Decred, I would put all of those as like, projects with really good developers, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the market respects it, right? Like they keep going down the list as new altcoins come in. At one point, I think Decred was in the top 20, and then it dropped to the top 50 and top 100. It's like not even in top 200 anymore. It's gotten pretty bad. Or I actually I should maybe look it up,
I'm looking at
but a
it
large,
now.
yeah.
It's like it's $14 right now, and I don't know where that
Hmm.
places it. It really doesn't matter. I was
Uh,
shilled this hard in 2020.
Number
Thank
245.
right, right. So yeah, that's yeah. You're right. It was up at $200 at that point. But luckily for me, I'd been through and I'd cleansed myself of all of that crap, and about to start going back to shitcoinery. But I think it's
Mm.
important that people understand, especially those people that are coming in new now, that that's the reason people like you and myself, we are just completely line in the sand, no shitcoins, none, because
Right.
there's no way you want to fall into that trap.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's really hard, right? Because you see during bull markets they go up faster. But the thing is, like, unless you know which one is going to pump, you're really just going to lose money. And what I've seen is a lot of people come in and they want to buy it because it's cheaper. They want to buy it because it's new, or there's a buzz around it. The thing is, like, it's a zero sum game. Unlike Bitcoin, like all these centralized things are zero sum games, and you know you you're enriching somebody else by buying it. And like this should have been one of the big tells was, Decred only would pay me in Decred. So I would have to like go sell it. And this is common throughout the altcoin industry is that if you do development work for them, they'll pay you in the currency that they pre-mine. So really for them, they're kind of getting your work for free, right? Like you're sort of like the Cantillon winner or something like that. But then you sell it into the market and they sometimes lock you up for some amount of time so that their coin doesn't dump. But that's what they think of their own coin is that they have to pay you in it in order to get rid of their pre-mine, or they're essentially using their privileged money printing position to hire you. And this how fiat works. And yeah, it's kind of a terrible situation.
Yeah, it certainly is. So don't do shitcoins, kids, especially not meth. That's the message from Jimmy and I today. Right, let's get on to the book because
Mm.
it's an excellent piece of work. You've got everything in here that I think you cover it so well. I do want to go into chapter 17, and I don't know, maybe you'd have guessed which one I would have picked up on, especially. It's on page 153. Yeah, it is.
Okay.
If you've got it in front of you there.
Yeah, I'm looking for it. College. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's a fun one. Yeah.
Fiat debases college. And I love the way you open with the first sentence. College is a scam. Now, this is going to trigger a lot of people. And I've tried to explain this so many times to so many people, but even like the siren song of college or university, as we call it here in the UK, is so strong that even under my own nose, under my own tutelage, my oldest daughter has decided to go to college to further her academic uh, career, I would say
Mm.
prison sentence, to study no less political science and international relations. And
Uh-huh.
I'm like, oh my God, really? Like, are you just trolling me at this stage? Is this the biggest troll? Is this the worst thing you could think of to get back at poor old dad? And I'm like, just go and work for the Human Rights Foundation or something. Go
Uh-huh.
read everything here that Alex has written about the IMF
Mhm.
and international relations
Uh-huh.
because this is what he studied, and you're done because
Uh-huh.
he's gonna explain it to you in such a way that you're going to understand it, and it's going to be intuitive, and it's going to make sense, and you're not going to hear that side whilst you're at the college. So this or that, but
Mhm.
this is the strength of the programming. This is the strength of the societal, like this belief that you have to go to college. Now that's my situation in the UK,
Mm.
and it's completely different, price wise. For example, in the UK, let's say that's going to cost £10,000 a year. Now
Mm.
you compare that to the United States. Oh my goodness! So please riff on why college is a scam and I'll fill in anything that I want to, riff on at the same time, and try and rescue some other families from falling into this debt trap.
Yeah, the thing that everyone sort of like pretends it is that you go there to learn something, right? And to be fair, there are a few professions where you actually do go learn. If you're going to be a doctor, you need to learn about the human body and things like that. If you're going to be an engineer, I can see arguments for that. But for a large number of majors, it's not that at all. If you're majoring in psychology and then go and afterwards become a McKinsey consultant, you're not using anything from your psychology degree in your consulting or your social work degree or whatever. You're not doing it for the knowledge. It's really more of a credentialing status game sort of symbol that most people are getting. And the thing is, what that started, at least historically, colleges were originally, seminaries, almost all of them, right? Like began as seminaries. Harvard, Princeton, Yale, lot of the universities in Europe and in the UK, they started as seminaries to train pastors. Oftentimes like there were like 8 people in one class, right? It wasn't that many people in like 1700 or something like that. That actually graduated. And it really was a place to actually go learn things. But then came like around after World War II, you had the GI Bill, which guaranteed basically um, any any soldier the right to go to college, or at least the ability for the government to pay for their college education once they came back. The thing was, like, at that time, when you went to college, you already, almost everybody that entered college already knew Latin, they knew Greek, they knew how to study, they already had studied like 2 or 3 dozen classical texts, but these universities wanted the GI Bill money because it was essentially free. So they accepted them, but these soldiers didn't know Latin, they didn't know Greek, they didn't read classical texts, so they dumbed it down, right? So fiat money literally debased the college education experience starting there. And it got worse and worse and worse as more money entered the system through student loans largely. But even a lot of other places where you had scholarships and so on, it was debasing the actual education. So it used to be, even when I was going to college, and this was, I'm embarrassed to say, but like almost 30 years ago, you still like studied stuff like the Reformation. I took a history class where, I wanted to learn about like what actually happened in the Reformation, what the different factions were and stuff, and it was a great class. Harvard right now has no classes on the Reformation. In fact, they don't have many classes on or at all in the entire Renaissance era. In fact, most of the history is like colonial history or Black history, or like it's all kinds of stuff that you wouldn't that wasn't studied previously. It's essentially been debased because college has become a consumer good. It's to get more bodies in so that they can get access to the newly printed fiat money. And that's what I mean when I say that fiat debases college, is that it went from something that was very rigorous to train you for a particular job, originally, pastors, but later on, many other professions, to the point where post World War II, it just got debased more and more to the point where it became just sort of like a weird kind of union card for getting certain kinds of jobs, right? Like there are lots of jobs in the economy that require a college degree that really shouldn't, right? Like if you're going to be somebody's secretary, what good is a college degree? That doesn't make sense. But they still require a college degree to be somebody's secretary or, work in HR or something like that. It's become sort of like a debased, more and more debased thing where, they kind of require it because they can. And it's a way to weed out I guess people that don't subscribe to that or whatever. But it's become a consumer good, and that's an unfortunate situation because there are a lot better ways to spend, at least in the United States, $250,000, which is about the cost of 4 years. I mean, you can do apprenticeships and lots of other things that are financially way more rational. But even if you're taking a 4 year vacation, I just read about I guess it's like liberal cope or something like that. They were saying, okay, if you don't like Trump, you can go on this cruise for the next 4 years, and it's only $40,000 a year, so $160,000 to stay out of the country for 4 years, traveling all over the world, and it costs a fraction of what college would cost. So I mean, it's a very, very expensive consumer good that's now kind of required for a lot of different employment opportunities, at least in fiat jobs. And I get into that in other parts of the book, but if you're a fiat fiat funded company, which every big company is nowadays, then you have an incentive to satisfy the bureaucrats, and the bureaucrats want you to hire these these college educated people because otherwise they don't have productive work. They don't know how to weld or do plumbing or anything actually useful. So they have to have jobs in these corporations, and that's who they end up hiring.
And there's something else that I want people to understand, because on the off chance there's anybody here on the verge of making a decision to go to college, Jimmy's laid out a very good case for a reason not to, because you have to look at it as a consumer good and a very expensive one. But if you look at it from the Austrian side as well, the opportunity cost is huge. Like, forget the debt handcuffs you're going to put yourself in and try and crawl yourself out from underneath that crippling debt burden for the next 10 to 15 years in whatever chosen career you enter. Like, that's what you're facing. You've got to pay off that debt, and you're being taxed at point of earning at anywhere up to like 50%, whatever. You are in a debt trap for the next decade and a half. The 4 years that has taken for you to put yourself into a debt trap could have been used doing something else, whether it's that Caribbean cruise on, for 4 years. You'd have met a whole lot of fun people. You'd have come up with some incredible projects. Like, you wouldn't have sat around doing nothing with your time. You wouldn't have been sat up on the top deck with a margarita all day and every day. Sure, some days per week, but like, human beings are creative. We are entrepreneurial by default. You would have found something. And the opportunity cost of 4 years, locking yourself into a subject, into a course, into one professor, or maybe two or three at best, you can't measure it. And it's just something else you really need to kind of take into consideration when you're making this decision.
Yeah, the education system is sort of set up so that you prepare people for rent-seeking roles, right? Like whether it's like some government position or HR position or something like that. And the thing is, that sort of position is kind of lottery-ish, right? So if you do go to Harvard for 4 years, assuming you get in and you pay all that, you can come out and possibly get a job at an investment banking firm and work your way up and make hundreds of millions of dollars. Now, that is very attractive to some people if you don't know about like how fiat money works and all that. And for them, it looks worthwhile because you're making way, way more money than you could as a plumber. But the thing is, you're essentially a rent seeker, right? Like you're a Cantillon winner. Your investment banks essentially have the ability to print money like out of nothing for almost any reason, especially with like dark pools of money and so on. And that's how they make all their money is they socialize the losses and they keep the gains or whatever. Um, and that is sort of like an attractive proposition if you can get there. Thing is, it's very hard. There's a lot of other people that are trying to get into the exact same position. And if you're going to work that hard, it's better just to be like Elon Musk, right? Like go create a company. You're going to work that hard. Go make something that's good for civilization instead of being a leech off of it because it's theft in all but name. And that's essentially what you're doing. So like even less than sort of like the economic argument because we are in a fiat system and there are sort of paths where it makes financial rational sense. I would say that the better argument is a moral one because you're not contributing anything to society by going down these paths. Yeah, maybe you're very good at social stuff and you can become a politician after graduating college and you could work your way up and with a little luck and a lot of handshakes you can become speaker of the house and be worth $200 million at the end of 4 decades of selling your soul. You may be able to do that, but have you really contributed much to civilization or society? And do you really want that kind of burden on your soul? Or, do you want to go and actually make something with your hands and, provide goods and services to the market that people want? I would say the latter is much better for you and much more satisfying in the end.
Yeah, for sure. The other chapter I wanted to touch on was let me just get the right one. It's chapter 8. Fiat debases families.
Mm. Yeah, Fiat definitely debases families. And I think that's the chapter where I get into the Frankfurt School. Is that right? Or is it
Good question.
I
Start riffing.
can't.
I'll look through and yeah.
Okay, yeah. So the big thing about families is that um there's been sort of like this persistent debasement of families because of a particular ideology, and that ideology is Marxism. And Marx himself said like you got to break up family bonds in order to make the communist paradise come to pass. So that sort of like intellectual foundation has or corruption has been around since like 1860 or whenever it was that Marx lived. But it became sort of like way more starting in like 1917 with the creation of the Soviet Union. And this was because, the Soviet Union under Lenin and certainly under Stalin, they had this vision of spreading communism everywhere, and they had this this conference every few years called the Communist International. And as with everything communist, they have to shorten it somehow, so it was called Comintern. And a lot of the early Comintern ones had like a lot of names that you would recognize. Mao Zedong, right? Pol Pot, and like all these like communist leaders would go to Russia and talk about, like how to bring about socialist paradise. Um, and certainly for the United States, there were communists that would go over and so on. The strategy that they embarked on was to sort of debase the family because that was holding back the workers' revolution. And I go through in that chapter about how in the 20s and 30s in particular, there was sort of like a crisis within Marxism because Marx had predicted, okay, first comes feudalism, then capitalism, then socialism, then communism, right? This is sort of what he asserted without any proof whatsoever, but that's what he laid out. And he said capitalism would fall when there would be like these massive failures. And certainly 1929 in the United States qualified as one. The hyperinflation of the Weimar Republic would, but and so all these communists were like, okay, yeah, these failures are all happening, and according to Marx, there should be a class consciousness and socialism should come. But socialism didn't come. And they were like, what's going on? We like, and they weren't willing to say that Marxism was wrong. So they started going through like the writings of Freud and like something that Marx said, that family is one of the inhibitors of class consciousness. So they said, okay, you know what? The reason why people are not waking up and having class consciousness is because of family, right? It's because of the close family bonds. And we have to break them up so that they could become class conscious. And this is actually the origin of the word woke. When you're talking about somebody that's woke, you're literally talking about somebody that has become class conscious. And and like obviously it's evolved a little bit, but that's the main idea, is that you have the right mindset to demand the right things, at least from their perspective. um but that was the theory, was that you know they need to be class conscious in order to bring about socialism, but they can't because of family. So they started trying to debase it wherever they could. So the four major institutions that they targeted were media, academia, um, churches, and I forget the fourth one. But these are all like very oh, and Hollywood, I think it was. All of these are have since become very left wing, and it's for a good reason. They purposefully infiltrated it, and one of the things that some communist coordinators pointed out is, if you could just get 1% of any given sort of like community to be communist, then I could that person claimed I could get communists in all the leadership positions. So a lot of labor unions, a lot of universities, like a lot of media. They all ended up having communist leadership, and it continues to this day. And they started debasing family because that was sort of like in their interest, and they used fiat money to do it because like the thing is, if you debase a family, you're not reproducing. So you have to constantly be recruiting new people, which is what they've done through universities and education. This is one of the sort of things that college does now, is that it's become kind of an indoctrination camp. And even K through 12 is largely an indoctrination camp. They're learning things um, that are very pro-government and so on. I mean, like my seventh grader was telling me the other day, like, yeah, I'm supposed to argue in class for why GMOs are good, right? Like why would you? Who's telling you that? It's like, well, we're reading these articles and that's what it says. I'm like, oh my God. So like that's a sort of like propaganda, that propagandizing that's been happening, and they use fiat money to do it because they know they can't win in a fair fight, right? Like, because if it's market based, then well, families are going to thrive because everyone else selects themselves out of the gene pool. So essentially, they've been debasing family as much as they can because of this ideology, and they're using fiat money to do it. And that's what I point out in that chapter.
Oh man, I got some things for you. I got some. I want to build on this. The reason I've been looking over my shoulder is I'm trying to pull the right book off the shelf here. Let me see. Can't find it. I don't have it to hand. But it's called Red Symphony, and I've shilled it so many times on Twitter that I really want people to go and pick that book up, because it's it's not even a book; it's a transcript. Jimmy, I'd love it if you read it and then come back on the show to do a book review with a couple of other plebs that I know have read it, because we
Okay.
could like everything you say in this chapter is directly linked to the conversation that took place in 1938 between Gavril Kuzmin and a gentleman by the name of Rakovsky. Rakovsky was a Trotskyite, and he had been the Russian ambassador to France. He had been
Mm.
arrested and brought back to be interrogated to find out what he knew and whether he could produce any information that would save his life the next day, because he was going to be hanged in the show trials with all the other Trotskyites during that period.
Mm.
And what he did manage to do is save his life, and he did that by explaining how the Comintern, how the real communists, and by the way, he thinks Marx is communist for pussies. Like he's like, you people Marx, like you whatever.
Yeah,
That's
Leninists, right?
nothing.
Yeah.
That's nothing
Yeah.
for what we have planned. And he explained how that they had captured the monetary system
Mm.
and levied usury over everybody. And when they did this and explained how it all happened right around the French Revolution, and how they had even infiltrated the revolutionaries to spark that, because it's all about fomenting war and it's all about dividing people. And you will get so much from this book. So few
Mm.
Bitcoiners have read it. And I would love to get as much information out about it as possible. So that's one thing. The next thing about Marx and about destroying the family, and how fiat currency is their weapon of choice to do that, and all the knock-on effects. A lot of people listen to me like, oh yeah, whatever, it's communism. Like no one lives under communism anymore. We're in a capitalist world. Like, they don't understand. So I want to show them. For those listening, you might have to tune into the YouTube channel for this particular part. But I was gifted this particular banknote by at Hodler Than Thou, or Sir Badminton of Bitcoin. And this is a commemorative Euro souvenir, €0 note, printed with Karl Marx's face on the front, as a commemoration and in memory of his 200th birthday. And they would sell these. So people buying this are buying a worthless piece of paper. It even tells you on there that it's zero, with the face of Karl Marx on there. And on the back, you have classic landmarks. We have Notre Dame. We have the Colosseum. We have the Eiffel Tower. You can see here. And it's people need to wake up. Why on earth are the European Union printing a €0 note with the face of Karl Marx on the front if we have succeeded in kicking communism out of our lives? But this is trolling of the highest order.
Well, so to be fair, there's like €0 notes all over, right? Like you can get a commemorative one with a bear on it, and lots of others. But to your broader point, we're way more socialist communist than you think, and institutions that don't go away despite it not being competitive is actually very good evidence of that fact. There's a lot of zombie companies. There's a lot of bureaucracies that aren't going away, even though they don't provide anything that the public wants and so on. That's evidence that we live in a more socialist, communist society, and that there's a good part that's capitalist, no doubt about that. But there's also a significant part that's socialist and communist. And I point out in the chapter on science, for example, that scientific the way science is done now is very much akin to how the Soviets did science. And it's no surprise then that we're not making much progress in science, because we're using their model, thinking that throwing money at it will produce more of the good. And that's not how science works. It's usually some genius that figures out something remarkable. Nikola Tesla being an obvious example. It's not about the amount of money you throw at it. And this is why I'm skeptical of things like nanotechnology and cold fusion and quantum computing because you don't just throw lots of money at it and make it happen. That's not how things happen, right? Like that's not how the history of science has progressed. It's never like that. It's usually an engineer tinkering with stuff, something works, doesn't know why, and then later it's the theoreticians that figure out, oh, that this is why it works, and we can experimentally prove it, and so on. Now we're actively going the other way, where it's okay, we can build this thing in theory. This is what quantum computers, nanotech, cold fusion, things like that are. It's you engineers that have to figure out how to do it, and then the engineers like that's yeah, this is impossible. Or okay, we'll take your money and pretend we're making progress when we really have no idea how to do it. And this is the Soviet model of science. It doesn't work, and it hasn't worked. And unsurprisingly, we're not making much progress.
And you even cover this as well in chapter 25 when you're talking about wind and solar are the altcoins of energy.
Yeah,
Same
yeah,
thing, right? What a
yeah.
waste of time. What a waste of money. And you brought Musk up earlier, and he's like, he keeps tweeting around how we're all going to move to solar energy. And I'm like, what? What? That's just so
Mm.
like, no, that's a shit coin. That's not. So it's weird. Like he's a weird character to me. Like I don't know. I trust him.
Well, he's been getting government subsidies off of
Yeah,
electric cars for a
all the
long
ZEV
time. So
credits.
I think he has some motivated reasoning in that direction. But I think if he were the thing is like what Elon Musk would have built, I think, had we not completely disemboweled nuclear energy from in the 70s, is he would have built some sort of like nuclear powered car or nuclear powered plane or nuclear powered space rocket. Because honestly, the energy density on nuclear is so enormous. Like one can of Coke of coal will power your house for a couple of hours. One can of Coke of uranium will power your house for a whole year. Like it is orders of magnitude better. And I point this out, I think, in one of the chapters that we had nuclear submarines in the 50s, right? These are vehicles that don't need to refuel for 18 months. That's how durable and how much energy nuclear power can give. And in fact, like the design of nuclear submarines is exactly like the nuclear reactors that we use for normal energy. It's a double water design. You heat up one water using the nuclear power, and then that heats up another thing of water that's actually used to drive a turbine. That's what makes a submarine go. It's also what generates electricity in a nuclear power plant. But that's the only design that's basically been tried under nuclear power. There's lots of other ways that you can use the actual nuclear energy uh, in order to generate electricity or lots of other kinds of power. It's just we've basically made it impossible to innovate on that front because you know government control, fiat, everything, or and so on. But had that tech been allowed to develop, I have no doubt in the world that we could have cars that don't need refueling for its entire life. If you could have a small nuclear power plant essentially within a submarine that powers it for 18 months. And it's a big ship, right? And
Mhm.
it's going all over. It has to supply all the electrical needs of the submarine as well as its propulsion power and everything else. Yeah, you could easily imagine a car never needing to refuel, right? No need for gas stations, right? You can also easily imagine a plane that goes around the world like several times, and not needing to refuel. Hey, there's so many applications of this technology that really didn't get explored because of regulatory fiat stuff
Mhm.
since the 70s, and largely due to nuclear fears of possible other
Propaganda.
rogue countries getting it and things like that. So I mean that's a real reason why they restrict it. Um, So it very well could have developed in a way that would have been commercially very, very viable. And this is one of the tragedies of World War II that a lot of people don't talk about, is that the nuclear bomb ended it, but it also put nuclear in this category of something that's very dangerous and needs to be regulated. Had nuclear developed in another direction without a war, then I think we could have had all kinds of energy uses without having gone down this route of like complete regulatory stoppage of anything interesting. And instead we have all this dependence on fossil fuels, all this dependence on wind and solar and hydro and things like that, all of which have upsides and downsides. I mean, fossil fuels are relatively good compared to the other ones. But I mean, honestly, nuclear could have probably fueled several trips to Mars by now if we just let that technology develop. And I think ultimately, like, had things been different, that's probably what Elon Musk would have been working on. But because that tech isn't available, that's not like a tool in his toolbox that he's allowed to have due to government intervention. He's had to go down this electrical route. And I mean, to be fair, he's done wonderful things with it, but it's still sort of like this. It's kind of he's having to make things with popsicle sticks instead of cement bricks, right? Like,
Yeah, it's regulation. It's also monopolization, right? And
mm,
regulatory control and lobbying in the background because the big oil companies that if they'd have seen nuclear coming, they'd have shut, and they would have done. They'd have shut that down. Like Rockefeller Standard Oil, that would not have bode well for them
mm,
if you weren't going to be buying that oil price. And that was the whole idea of them funding M. King Hubbard's peak oil theory discovery
mm,
and propagandizing that all over the world. And the
mm,
same dudes that captured the education system through the General Education Board, and the same dudes that captured the monetary system through the meeting on Jekyll Island.
mm-hmm,
That it's just that there's so much. There's so much going on behind the scenes because of Fiat and the Fiat
mm-hmm,
incentives that, like you say, Fiat ruins everything because the
mm,
incentive structures and misaligned, malinvested, like money. It's just, and we all feel the crippling effects of it. Like you say, debases the family, debases faith, as you talk about in one of the earlier
mm.
chapters as well, and debases the education. We live in such a clown world, and that's why you got the picture of the clown on the front. And I mean, let's leave people with some optimism. I mean, I'm sure most people listening to the show are listening to it because they've listened to it for a long time and they understand that Bitcoin fixes this. But for those that are new here, how do you wrap it all up and give people hope towards the end of the book that there is a bright orange future?
Yeah, the thing is, a lot of the bad that we see is the result of fiat money, and we've touched on a lot of it from education to energy to you know, co- uh, you know, science and many other things. Um, but the thing is, it's fiat doesn't last all that long, right? The average lifespan of a fiat currency is 23 years, something like that. And if you count from 1971, it's now 53 years old. So it's already lived 30 years past what normal fiat currencies do. Now, granted, it's the world reserve currency, and maybe it has more life to go. The thing is, it's not perpetual. It's not forever, and it does seem to be sort of collapsing under its own weight. We saw with this conflict in Ukraine, one of the first sort of dominoes to fall was, Russia got basically debanked by the rest of the world, which means that the reserve currency status is starting to be under threat, and all the countries aligned with Russia, I think places like Belarus are also kind of off the dollar standard already. And yeah, no doubt that it's starting to crumble. And that's a good thing because when fiat goes down, then a lot of these incentives go away. And especially if you have a sound money alternative like Bitcoin, then lot better behavior starts to emerge, like in a decentralized way. So you and I obviously have a lot of kids, but this is one of the things that you notice in the Bitcoin community, and it's just so obvious. People are having lots of kids. Why is that? Well, because they have the ability to plan and they can sort of opt out of the fiat system through Bitcoin. And a lot of these other incentives that are at play are no longer at play when you're on a Bitcoin standard. And I think as more people go on that, the weaker this fiat effect becomes. Part of the reason I think your daughter wants to go to university is sort of like the status marker that it's been for a long time. And it's, you're not going to get rid of that in a day, right? It took hundreds of years for Cambridge and Oxford to get the reputations that they have. They're also not going to lose it in one day either. Though, Harvard and UPenn and places like that are trying very hard to ruin their reputations very quickly. Uh, but at some point it does collapse, and I can see it in a lot of young people, especially like young men. They're kind of opting out of a lot of that stuff. I was reading about how it's colleges are completely female dominated at this point, where it's like 60-40 in some places. Um, and young men just refuse to go because they're like, well, I don't want to accumulate that much debt. I'd rather go and do something else. And it's all kind of, BS email jobs anyway afterwards. So like I'd rather do something with my hands. And that's the option that they're taking. In a way, it's already starting to collapse. And Bitcoin is one of the major ways in which you can replace the fiat world. It's not the only one, but it's a significant one. Um, and I think that's how we're going to come out of this. Is that you need to skate to where the puck is going, like Wayne Gretzky said, right? Like and the where the puck is going is fiat collapse. You want to be ready for when that's happening because the sort of like insanity that we've seen the last 4 years, starting with COVID, and continuing with BLM and transgender stuff and all that. It is just like for most normal people, it's way beyond anything that they could have imagined, and uh, uh, like having to accept, and especially in like the UK with people getting arrested, like the abuses of power through fiat money are more obvious than ever, and it will collapse. It can't continue this way. They're just uh, like financially, economically, spiritually, even it's unsustainable. So yeah, move before others do, and I promise it'll be a lot better for you going forward.
And people are probably thinking, yeah, great for you guys to say, you've been in the space a little while, you're ahead of us. It's too late for me. And we've been on this call now, Jimmy, for like an hour and a half or something. We've not mentioned price once. And we broke a new all-time high just before we hit record. Like just before we hit record, we're up at $94,000 priced in US dollar terms. But that's not what we're here for. And
Mm.
that is another message that I think, you and I are both very uh, kind of, we feel important for people to understand that it's
Mm.
not number. You're not here, to quote American Hodl, we're not here for forever riches and big titty bitches, right? We're here to earn our freedom, and we
Mm.
see Bitcoin as that tool, and to be able to give us the foresight to plan and to look after our large families. I mean, we got 10 kids between the two of us, right? That's some big responsibility. And like you said, more Bitcoiners, the younger guys, they're going to have a ton of kids. I was talking to Katie the Russian a few months ago. We did a whole home birth maximalism podcast. She's ready for like four, five, six. Keep them coming. I'm good to
I,
go.
th I think she already has two, right? If
Yeah.
I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
Yeah.
She's moved pretty fast. Yeah. And that's common. And the this is what sort of being able to plan and having hope and does. The thing is the world is suffering from sort of like this weird fiat doomerism. Like they've been thinking that the world's going to get worse for like 50 years now. Even like like when I was growing up, I would be talking to my mom. It's like, we didn't want to have too many children because who wants to bring children into this dark and dreary world and stuff like that. And like, I don't think that way at all, right? Like I think it's going to be an amazing future and there's going to be a lot of opportunity and there's going to be all kinds of cool stuff that you can work on and contribute to. Um, but that sort of like doomerism is inherent in a debasing currency. It's when you've seen your savings just get debased over and over again, stolen from them again. And like you can't help but think, okay, the other shoe's about to drop. And I really do challenge a lot of people on your that are listening to this, like, yeah, try it out, right? Like, like see how your mentality changes. Go. You only really need to go through one cycle to be like, oh man, this really is different.
Mhm.
But a cycle is 4 years. That's a long time. But once you've been through that, it's like, oh man, like it's so much better thinking this way than the other way, where I'm depressed all the time and thinking about the ways in which I'm going to get screwed in one way or the other, either through government propaganda, which was overpopulation for a long time. Currently, it's
Oh
like
God.
climate change and racism and whatever. But it's all always sort of like doomerish. It's never really hopeful. We're offering something very different, right? It's hope, and this is what Michael Saylor says. Bitcoin is hope. It's the ability to plan. It's being master of your own destiny, and being able to save and work and earn the things that you want to achieve, right? Like going after the goals and dreams that you might have. We started this podcast talking about, the trip around the world that I did with my family. That's something that you can do if you have a good savings vehicle, right? That was always a dream of mine since I was 20s, in my 20s. And I'm so glad that I got to do it. And my kids will never forget it. And it's something that I wanted to do that I got to do because I had a good savings vehicle and a means to achieve it. Uh, you too can have those means. And if you do, then it's going to be a lot more of a hopeful future for you. And you're going to be able to go and try stuff that you've always wanted to try. Like go make a feature movie. Go and buy a boat. I don't know. Like go and start a university. Whatever it is that you want to do, go and do it because the world's your oyster when you have this ability to go and save and not have it be stolen from you. And that's really ultimately what causes people to be such doomers.
All right, Jimmy. Final question. If you had one last orange pill left to give to somebody, who would you give it to and why?
I I would say right now it would be Donald Trump because he's got a lot of influence. But I don't know. I mean, it could be a lot of people, I guess. But Donald Trump, I think.
All right. Excellent. So, people who have listened to this, Jimmy's written 5 books. Christmas is coming up. Just fill your stockings. Go and get them all. Jimmy, where can they find them?
Amazon is the easiest place, I guess. If you just look up my name, Jimmy Song, and there's an author page and everything.
Are you
Um,
on consensus? Do those guys sell them for you?
some of them, I know Thank God for Bitcoin's been translated in a few, and the Little Bitcoin book in a few. We did sell the Fiat Ruins Everything rights in Korean at least, but I don't think the Consensus guys have done anything with that one.
All right.
And Programming Bitcoin is published by O'Reilly, and they have it in several languages. For some reason, it's like Russian, Polish, Chinese, Japanese, and Korean. Like none of the others other than that. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Jimmy, for everything that you have done in the Bitcoin space. You've been such a part of the journey for me. I remember watching you on those videos that you were talking about back in 2017, 18, when during the height of that craziness, I really had no idea what was going on. And it was nice to know that there were people there that were coming out with, sound, solid, factual arguments against all the other just like hype. And yeah, you've changed many people's lives. And I'm sure many people in the Bitcoin space today would say the same as me. And that is thank you, appreciate you, and look forward to what you're going to do next.
Well, thank you. And yeah, I don't know what I'm gonna do next, so we'll see.
I'm looking forward to it. So take care, man. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you.